Welcome, my friends, to another tournament showdown featuring Game 2 between myself and Hadries that took place in Aerocrastic Salad Cup. Now, as far as the matchup goes, it's going to be my Tomb Kings led by Ark in the Black facing off against Hadries' Rats, who shall be led by Lord Skrulk, of course, the filthiest of all the rat people. Now, as far as the build goes, this is a build I've been using for quite some time, and it's certainly very strong, and yes, it's going to be the dreaded double Bone Giant. So a lot of people probably thought this was a meme when they first saw it, like, oh, bringing two of the Bone Giants, it's a little bit overkill, probably not going to be super efficient, but against Skaven, it is really damn good. Oftentimes, Skaven are going to bring a Warp Lightning, they're going to bring Doom Wheels, Plague Furnaces, Hell Pit Abominations, a lot of big targets that are just so juicy for Bone Giants, and Bone Giants can easily outtrade Warp Lightning Cannons, and I mean, they only cost like 400 or 500 more. Plus, in the late game against Skaven, these bad boys are actually pretty powerful. I mean, they don't have the best combat stats, but 400 weapon strength, 9,400 HP. They also cause terror. Certainly no joke. So for the build double Bone Giant, we do of course have Ark in the Black, who's going to be running some interference. So basically, he's going to be trying to juke this Warp Lightning Cannon, which if I don't juke it, I mean, it's going to be hitting pretty hard. So, oh, just Tokyo drifting straight out of the way there. Definitely very solid performance by Arkin. But we're going to be using Faded Buna to really shut down the Council Guard, because those are some of the key assets in the Skaven army, right? They have the Council Guard, they're going to have Warp Lightning Cannons. So use Buna to kill the Council Guard, Skeleton Summons to kind of tar pit gun lines, and use the Bone Giants to just pick apart everything else. On top of that, we have a couple groups of Nehekara Horsemen, two of them that are going to be pressuring the flanks, because when the Skaven do see that there's double Bone Daddies here, double Bone Giants, they're going to have to pay the Bone Toll, and they're not going to be able to sit still. You'll be able to outtrade their artillery for the most part, unless they just go crazy and bring like a ton of Jezzails and Warp Lightnings, but that's very unusual in this matchup, because the other style of play that you play against Skaven with Tomb Kings is just a bum rush, basically just a bunch of horsemen and chariots, and it can be really tough. So they have to choose kind of one or the other, or go somewhere in between, but once they see the double Bone Giant, they're going to advance, and when they're advancing, that's when you strike with Arkin, with your horsemen, and your other high-value assets there. So we do also have some birds here. The Carrion going to be going to harass. Our front line is very cheap, I think. Is it all Tomb Guard? No, I think it's one or two Tomb Guard. Yeah, two Tomb Guard, some Skeletons, and then we got Skeleton Spears in the back. So some decent quality in the form of two Tomb Guard, which of course do very well against pretty much all the Rat Infantry, with the exception of Stormworm. And so we do also have a Tomb Prince here in the back, just in case there's a big monstrous fight. I wanted to have a true dedicated anti-large character. He does have Tomb Strike. Again, giving him the ability to cause terror is super useful here in this matchup as well. Now in the back, this is kind of the X Factor pick, and I was, kind of wondering about how to spend that last bit of gold I have, because my usual build is pretty much the exact same here. You see the double Bone Giant, but I had a little bit of extra. So sometimes I would get like a Tomb Scorpion or some Ushapti, but I found that the Eyes of the Desert, the fact that they have stock, means that Warp Lightning and kind of a gunplay isn't really going to be able to hurt them. And then when the Skaven finally get to your backline, they're trying to shut down the Bone Giants, things like that. These guys pop up out of nowhere, and they have bonus for large, they have armor piercing, a great answer against Doom Wheels, Flayers, Hell Pits, Rat Ogres, you name it. I'm certainly actually becoming a pretty big fan of the Eyes of the Desert. So that's pretty much it for my build. And for Hadries, it's pretty classic stuff. It's going to be in the front, just some Clan Rats, Skrulk, and looks like a Warlock Engineer for Howling Warp Gale. I wonder what the Howling Warp Gale's for in this matchup. Maybe just to shut down like Carrion and things like that. He does also have a couple Rattling Gunners. So if I were like pressing with Constructs and things like that, Rattling Gunners have pretty good damage against AP, but more importantly, they have suppression. So they can kind of slow down Horsemen and Chariots and allow the Skaven to position a little bit better. But you can see here, the Warp Lightning Cannon's just getting decimated by the Bone Giants. And he's got a Hell Pit Abomination, and that's pretty much it, guys. So let's get this tournament showdown on the road. So right here, the Bone Giant's still going to be opening up shop, but just because I have the ranged advantage doesn't mean I'm going to be sitting still. I'm going to be advancing my forces, and a lot of people are probably wondering, why am I advancing here when I have the ranged advantage? He's going to have to come to me. Well, that's because I want to create a buffer between my force and my bows in the back line, or his force and my bows in the back line. So basically, if I advance and fight him up here, he's going to have to further to go once my front line eventually loses, which it probably will, because it's mainly just a couple skeletons with some Tomb Guard. But you can see here that the Ikid Zap Zap Cannon going down very, very quickly, which is a great pick, because that thing costs like, I think, 1,100 or 1,200 gold. So at this point, we basically just have the Vultures, quite literally here. They're going to be swooping back here and going after the scraps of the Ikid's Zap Zap Cannon. So now basically I just have to deal with the other things that are very good against the Bone Giants, which are going to be the Rattling Gunners. Yes, they have a range disadvantage, but nonetheless, I need to shut them down quick. So you can see my Bone Giants are going to be turning here, but Hadries is advancing very quickly, so I do use a Skeleton Summon to kind of halt that advance, but Ark in the Black is going to get popped in the face with Libra Bubonicus. Man, such a powerful item. I mean, just one cast of that, taking Arkin down to probably like 65%, just such good value. Now in the back, we are able to get some horsemen here on the rats, and basically I just want the Bone Giants to eventually pick them apart to the point where they run. And when they run, they're going to run out of the Skaven army, and I should be able to feast on them with my kind of vulture type units here, like the horsemen and these other forces. So here we do, of course, have the Tomb Guard advancing to fight some Clan Rats, some of the Bone Daddies continuing to fight as well, but the Skaven are going to be hitting the front line pretty quick, and I mainly just have to make sure I don't lose Ark in the Black, just some like gooning or cheesing or focus fire from Rattling Gunners with Libra Bubonicus, because if I get out of position once, Focus fire comes in from Rattling Gunners and then a Libra as well. It's going to be a trash can for Arkin the Black for sure. So mainly just going to be using him in a very safe manner, going through these nearby troops here. My Skeletons obviously probably a relatively even fight against Clan Rats. I mean, maybe a slight advantage for the Rats, especially since they do have a Warlock Engineer here, but we're just going to be using him in a very conservative manner just to kind of push things off. So you can see in the back here, we have been able to get the artillery crew. So the Carrion are chasing the Ikit Zap Zap cannon crew because I believe there's one piece online, and the Horsemen here are going to be going after the scraps of the Rattling Guns weapon team. So definitely quite happy with the performance of the Horsemen so far. A little bit of over-chasing from some Tomb Guard, but you know, you can't win them all. So here in the front line, we do of course have the Skeleton Spearmen holding pretty well against Rat Ogres, and the Nehakar Horsemen coming in for a fat charge into the back of these Skaven, getting a good surround here, but the Helped Abomination obviously will win this fight. I don't want to stay too long, and once the guns are done, I can then switch the Bone Giants to start shooting at the Helped, because that's going to be the next kind of big threat I have to face off against. But a little bit of friendly fire from the Bone Daddies, but nonetheless they're quite happy. So Arkin's going to be popping Liber Mortis, giving 44% physical resist and 8 leadership to this big old blob. And finally, we're starting to make some decent contact with the Helped Abomination. Just being very careful with Arkin, because you guys can see the bounce power, I am ahead, but any slip-ups with Arkin, if I lose him and, you know, Skrulk is still somewhat healthy, it could be a very, very dangerous situation. So in the back, Horsemen are able to get the Teeth Breakers, and the other Rattling Guns have come back online, but I will be making kind of a methodical effort to really shut those guys down. And you can also see Libra Bubonicus, or excuse me, Fata Buna has gone off to really crump the Council Guard, and should lose to these Tomb Guard now. So the sneaky snakes in the back are now shooting. So we do have the Eyes of the Desert going in on the Helped Abomination. Here it comes right here. And the damage, it's kind of hard to tell because the Bone Giant shooting as well, but it seems like the damage from the Eyes of the Desert with their ranged attacks aren't bad. They don't have bonus for large, but it does apply poison, which is nice for slowing the Helped down to 45 speed. And let's watch here. Okay, so about 400 damage from that volley, which really isn't bad. Bone Giants coming in, just hammering that Helped Abomination, doing over 1,000 damage. Absolute brutality. So from here, we're going to be sending our last wave of Skeleton Spears to kind of intercept. And now as the Helped Abomination comes back here, we have the Eyes of the Desert who can come forward with their bonus versus large and actually fight pretty well in melee combat because they do have halberds, which is pretty neat. So I was wondering about the applications of these guys, but I think against the Skaven, they have some pretty good applications, assuming you can win the artillery or the range duel. But if you don't, obviously Skaven will tear these things apart with their guns, but with the Bone Giant support who shot Great Bows, I think they certainly are pretty decent. So the Sepulchral Stalkers, as they're actually called, going to be getting into combat, and the Helped Abomination has been broken. So now the Bone Giant's going to be turning about face here to try and finish it off, and it must be very low at this point. So 1200 HP. I know it could potentially proc and get some fat heals, and it looks like Skrulk Daddy is going to be dropping a summon here, coming in to try and take out Arkin the Black. Very close call. If I had let him get caught there, it could have been quite disastrous. So we just barely get away there, and the Helped Abomination is going to be going down. But nonetheless, even though I've done a lot of damage, I've taken out the Zap Cannon, I've taken out the Council Guard for the most part, the Helped Abomination, a lot of high value targets, the bounce power still is actually kind of even, and that's because the Skaven are getting very close and I am running out of ammo, so at this point I still have to be pretty careful. We're going to be getting some Bone Giants with their Mike Tyson right hooks, and tell me, look at that. Was that a right hook? Hang on, I'm trying to, yeah, that was a right hook, obviously. He has the bow in his left hand there, but yeah, they got some pretty powerful haymakers, as they are going to be stomping on some rats, and Arkin the Black is going to be using all of his abilities basically just to peel for the Bone Giants. Bone Giants still have pretty good ammo at this point, so if I can sit and shoot at Skrulk, I can sit and shoot at some of the Rat Ogres, some of these other good targets, it's going to be enough to probably pull me ahead substantially in the bounce of power. So Council Guard is still going firm, only up to 14 kills. Tomb Guard have been able to kind of deal with them ever since the Buna was done. And in the back, finally, those Carrion took like 5 years, just an eternity, to take out those freaking Ikit Zap crew here. We do also have some Nehakar Horsemen, which are just such a good unit. They take forever to break, great defensive stats for the cost, and they're going to be buying some time for the Eyes of the Desert, which will be turning about face to shoot at these Rat Ogres. So now there are some ratty boys coming in, but with Arkin and the Mike Tyson right hooks coming in from these, in the back end, not over there, coming in from the Bone Giants, it's going to be pretty tough. And of course, the longer I fight with Arkin the Black, the more skeleton summons I'm going to get. And finally, we do get to isolate those Rat Ogres a little bit with a charge coming in from the Eyes of the Desert with their halberds. Should be able to easily finish off these Skaven in the back pocket. So here come the Bone Giants, methodically moving towards Skrulk. He is a little bit alone now, so if I get the Bone Giants kind of beating him down and just use Arkin to just kind of ride dirty through some of these Clan Rats and these other forces, it could be quite strong. But nonetheless, Hatred still does have some tools on the battlefield. And look at that balance coming back towards the middle, as Skrulk Daddy in the back must be doing some pretty good damage, but also the Warlock Engineer with its Mortis Engine effect. It does have an item, I think it's called Warp Shard Armor or something like that. But it basically has been doing perpetual AoE damage to a lot of my troops, so I really don't have much left in the way of infantry. I have some Tomb Guard fighting here, and I believe some Tomb Guard fighting here, a group of 90, which is actually pretty good. But the Skaven are swarming back here in some pretty serious numbers, and the Bone Giants don't have the best leadership, so we're trying our best to hold on here, getting some right hooks here on Lord Skrulk. We're also going to be charging in for a big old punch here with Ark in the Black. Just trying to get Skrulk away, because if I can break Skrulk, I can basically disengage the Bone Giants, run them back towards the front line, and from there Ark in the Black could easily just chase off Skrulk. So Skrulk Daddy is going to be breaking, and these rats here are summoned rats, so you can see they are going to be disappearing, which is very thematic. You know, as the Skaven Lord buckles, pretty much in every lore or narrative story about Skaven, the rest of the Skaven typically run, because they're like, screw the shit, we're out of here. Eyes of the Desert in the back going to be fighting pretty hard against the Rat Ogres as well. Some Clan Rats getting in there. Yeah, these guys have good armor as well, I think. They have 80 armor. Melee defense at 45, so certainly not bad. I mean, against Clan Rats, they should be able to hold for quite some time. But the Clan Rats do, of course, have a bonus versus large. But they're really cool looking. Every time I see the loading screen for Tomb Kings and I see these guys, I'm like, oh, those are like the coolest looking unit. What are they? And it takes me a couple seconds to realize that they're Sepulchral Stalkers. But they're so uncommon in multiplayer. But the fact that these guys do have stock and anti-large makes them pretty useful in some matchups, like defending against Cav play and things like that in your back line. Certainly not bad. So the Bone Giants, having dealt with Skrulk, are now going to be surging into the back, basically just to secure that position. And you can see here the Warlock Engineer, though he's done a really good job against Tomb Guard, just draining them this whole battle. Tomb Guard are a very resilient troop, and you can see here they're going to be able to outmuscle these Clan Rats and these Skaven slaves over here. And it's probably going to be all she wrote for the Skaven, as the Bone Giants coming in with those right hooks and the Sepulchral Stalkers, doing a very, very efficient job of defending that back line. I believe Skrulk Daddy did come back for one last hoorah here, and I believe he's going to get the ceremonial beatdown here from the double Bone Giants. I can't quite remember, but no, he's just going to shatter. So very well played to Hadries. That was game 2 in our best of 3 showdown in Aerocrastic Salad Cup. So guys, stay tuned here for the, not the grand finals, but for the rubber match, game 3 in our series, which was a really, really good match. It was my Beastmen facing off against his Tomb Kings, and man, you guys don't want to miss this one. It's going to be coming up probably tomorrow, a little bit later in the day, maybe the same day, depends on when I post this, but yeah, it's pretty fun. We got Cygors, we got freaking Tomb Scorpions, just all sorts of spooky, scary stuff. Yeah, as far as this build goes, I think it's really strong. Now, the main reason it is strong is because it's so unusual as it pertains to the usual way to play against Skaven. Usually, Tomb Kings come in with a huge Horseman Chariot rush and just swarm all over the Skaven. As such, you can see Hadries with a defensive build, right? He has the Council Guard, he has Hell Pits, he has Rat Ogres, a very tight build that's very, very hard to penetrate for like a massive rush. However, that being said, if you come in with like a double Bone Giant build, you can catch this build off guard. It's basically a counter pick to this type of a build, which most people bring. But, you know, once people start to get privy to this, I don't think it'll be as good, because Skaven can bring a couple Jezzails, especially Natty Bubos and things like that. I mean, they could easily deal with the Bone Giant build if they're prepared for it. But again, they really have to respect the rush. But I don't know, I'm going to have to come up with some other builds, because once the cat's out of the bag, I don't know how well this build will do, but we'll find out, I guess. Maybe I'll just bring it and see if it can beat the other Skaven builds. Who knows? So very well played to Hadries. And guys, stay tuned for Game 3 coming up soon. Have an excellent night and take care.